5-year-old boy reveals what happens to the soul after cremation. There was a question no one dared to ask aloud. What really happens to the soul after the body is cremated? It was the kind of question many kept silent, fearing answers that might shake what they had always believed. However, before any adult dared to formulate this concern, a 5-year-old boy, one of those who still carry in their eyes a kind of gleam that seems to come from somewhere otherworldly, opened his mouth and said that he saw what no one else saw, that he felt what no one dared to feel. And it was precisely this child, small in body but ancient in soul, who perceived something that completely escaped the comprehension of adults. A subtle, almost invisible movement that occurred the instant the flames touched what remained of the body. He spoke as if he were describing something he was seeing at that very moment, as if the spiritual world were right there, within reach of his small hands, and what adults called mystery was, for him, simply reality. He said that at the moment of cremation, the soul doesn't burn, because it doesn't belong to the fire, but to that which exists before and after any life. What was frightening wasn't what he said, but the serenity with which he claimed to see what no one else was able to notice. It was as if his sensitivity, free from fears and distractions, tore the veil that blinded the older generation. Thus his presence became a silent warning. If even a 5-year-old boy could perceive what happens to the soul after cremation, perhaps adults had long been ignoring signs that had always been there. Uncertainty about what happens to the soul after cremation is far more common than people admit. This is largely because the topic of death in the modern world has been pushed into the dark corners of consciousness. Fast-paced routines, social pressure to avoid deep conversations, and the ancestral fear of confronting the invisible have created an environment where spiritual questions have been silenced. Even so, studies show that more than 70% of people have wondered at some point if the soul feels anything when the body is burned. It's a silent, almost forbidden, but universal question. And it grows especially during times of grief, when any sign from the other side becomes a search for relief. Spiritually, there exists what some call an energy veil, a subtle field that separates physical perception from spiritual perception. It is this veil that adults thicken over time. Worries, fears, accumulated pain, and material life reinforce this blockage, creating a kind of fog that prevents them from perceiving what lies beyond the visible. The 5-year-old boy, however, lives before this dense layer forms. He feels as if he directly touches the vibration of the spiritual plane, and therefore perceives what adults have become accustomed to ignoring. For him, the soul is not a concept, it is presence. He himself says that he can feel when a soul detaches itself, as if it were a warm wind passing over his skin, something that no one around seems to notice. This doubt is also intensified because many families, when opting for cremation, carry conflicting emotions. Fear that the soul will suffer, apprehension that the spiritual transition will be interrupted, or the belief that the fire has some impact on detachment. In intimate conversations, several people admit to being afraid of doing something wrong with their loved one. It is a conflict that arises from the unknown, from a lack of understanding about the energetic process that accompanies death. Meanwhile, everyday situations make this unease even stronger. Hurried wakes, farewells interrupted by protocols, and the spiritual silence that often settles in when everyone tries to be strong. It is in these moments that the figure of the 5-year-old boy emerges as a living symbol. Because he feels what no one talks about, he expresses what adults bury within themselves. He notices, for example, that when a soul detaches itself, there is a gentle movement, as if a light were rising and the ambient temperature were changing. While the adults try to appear rational, he observes with a calm gaze, as if he understands that matter remains, but essence does not. And that is where the conflict arises, Because if even a child can perceive that the soul is not bound to the body, why are so many adults afraid of what happens when the body is given over to fire? If this topic resonates with you, join our community and subscribe to our channel. Here we discuss spiritual health and physical well-being in a clear, truthful way, offering tips that truly make a difference. The 5-year-old boy said that the great misconception adults have is thinking that cremation can interfere with the soul's destiny. He spoke with the serenity of someone who knows a plane that cannot be learned from books, that the real risk was never in the fire, but in what the soul takes with it when it departs. According to him, there is a sensitive point in the spiritual realm that is often forgotten throughout incarnations. A vibratory core composed of emotions that were not released, experiences marked by attachment, resentments that remained stored, and memories of other lives that continue to echo even after the body ceases to exist. This core doesn't originate at death. It accompanies the soul long before that. These are ancient energies, accumulated like dust that settles in layers at the bottom of a chest, eventually creating density in the subtle field. When life ends, this accumulation can hinder detachment, not because of cremation, but because the soul still carries with it ties it hasn't recognized, memories it hasn't purified, and bonds it hasn't let go of. The boy explained that these vibrational charges don't burn, they vibrate. And if the soul tries to ascend while still attached to this forgotten point, it feels an oscillation, a hesitation, as if part of it tries to move on while another part remains clinging to something that no longer exists. He spoke of it as one who observes a clear movement, though invisible to adults. He recounted that, just before cremation, the soul is already outside the physical body, but remains close, not out of obligation, but out of habit. It's as if it needs to understand that matter is no longer its home. When the fire begins, it is not the fire that touches the soul. It is the soul that, for the first time, realizes it no longer has anywhere to lean on. This moment is delicate for those who still carry dense burdens. The vibratory force, accumulated in unresolved experiences, creates an impression of weight, as if consciousness were wavering between the plane that bids farewell and the plane that welcomes it. And it is at this moment that the 5-year-old boy becomes essential as a symbol. He narrates that he perceives all this as a silent calling, a breath that crosses the space between one world and another. His mediumistic sensitivity, still so close to its spiritual origin, allows him to understand subtle vibrations that adults have lost the ability to notice. He says he feels a slight shiver, a gentle warmth passing through his chest, and he knows it's not wind, it's not temperature, it's not imagination. It's his soul trying to organize itself in the new state. For him, this forgotten point of the soul is not a mystery. It is something evident, almost palpable. It is as if a childlike consciousness, still recent upon returning to the physical plane, recognizes what the older generation has ignored for decades. He says that this point vibrates like a discordant note in the melody of spiritual transition, and that many adults, without ever having listened to their own soul, confuse this vibration with fear, pain, or suffering. But in truth, it is merely the echo of what has not yet been released. The boy observes this process with a calm gaze because he recognizes something familiar in that moment, something that all souls experience upon rebirth and departure. He comments that some souls ascend quickly, light and bright. Others need a few more moments to understand that they no longer belong to the body they cared for during a lifetime. And he feels this as one feels the pulse of a distant melody, something that doesn't need to be explained, only embraced. When this forgotten aspect of the soul is not understood, the spiritual transition can become more difficult than it should be. Not because there is physical pain. The soul does not carry the body, does not feel heat, does not perceive fire, but because it carries to the other side everything that remained uncomprehended. For many consciousnesses, this means going through the moment of separation, still enveloped by attachments, dense emotions, insistent thoughts, or even the feeling that they left something incomplete in the life that ended. It is at this moment that the inner weight manifests as confusion, disorientation, or an inability to perceive the light that tries to guide the way. Cremation does not influence this state, but it can highlight it because it marks the definitive end of the connection with the material world. For a soul still burdened, this perception can be felt as an abrupt farewell, even if there is no physical suffering involved. The 5-year-old boy said that when this density remains, the soul cannot immediately detach itself from the presence of the body. He described it as a movement in which consciousness tries to rise, but the old vibration, the one that was never released, pulls it back, as if asking for one more moment to understand what is happening. He said he had felt this oscillation near loved ones who had passed away, a subtle, silent coming and going, almost imperceptible to those who do not possess the same sensitivity. And he explained that when cremation begins, many souls simply observe, trying to understand if they still need to remain close or if they can finally move on. It is not pain, it is hesitation. It is not suffering, it is a lack of clarity. But this state can last much longer than it should when the soul carries memories that continue to vibrate in a disordered way. In everyday life, this impact reveals itself in small signs that permeate the environment unnoticed. Entire families feel, in the days following the passing, a subtle presence, almost like a touch in the air, but they can't name it. Some houses seem to become quieter, as if holding a suspended breath. Objects that belong to the deceased provoke unexpected sensations, an overwhelming longing, an unexplained weight in the chest, or a strange calm, as if someone were watching nearby. All this happens because the soul is still trying to adjust, trying to understand that it continues to exist, even though it no longer has a body to recognize itself in. This stage should be gentle, but the accumulated vibrations make the process slower, more nebulous, like a fog that prevents the soul from seeing its own path. There is also the emotional impact on those who remain. When a soul finds it difficult to move on, those around seem to feel more sadness than usual, as if receiving echoes of what the soul has not yet been able to release. In some cases, intense dreams, nocturnal visits, and sudden sensations of presence arise, leaving people confused. These are not bad signs. They are simply signs that the transition is still incomplete. The 5-year-old boy, with his sensitivity still connected to the spiritual plane, described this naturally. He said that sometimes he felt someone nearby, as if he needed help understanding that he could now move on. And this happens not because the fire held the soul back, but because the soul retained parts of the life that has already ended. He said that when this density persists, the ascension process becomes more tiring. The soul tries to understand who it is now, tries to remember who it was before, tries to understand where it should go. This vibratory effort can create a state of spiritual confusion that reverberates both in the soul and in the family left behind. Some people spend entire days with a strange feeling in the environment, a mixture of longing and restlessness, without knowing that they are perceiving something real, something that is not physical. It is a kind of silent communication, a request for the transition to be understood and embraced. The boy said that none of this should happen if the soul were light. According to him, cremation is merely a material detail, but the inner state of the soul is what determines the fluidity of the passage. When the vibration is clean, consciousness detaches itself even before the body is prepared for farewell and follows its path without looking back. But when it carries emotional remnants, trapped memories, or bonds that were not understood, this moment becomes slower. and the soul needs much more energy to find the path that was already destined for it. That's why many people, even years after the death of a family member, feel that something isn't finished. It's because the soul, upon departing, leaves reverberations in the environment, delicate, not negative, echoes that continue to vibrate until the process of inner understanding is complete. Cremation doesn't interrupt this path. It only marks the moment when the body ceases to exist. The true process happens before, during, and after, and those who are sensitive, like that 5-year-old boy, realize that nothing ends there. It only changes form. If this warning resonated with you, leave a comment. Tell us, have you or someone in your family ever experienced this? Your experience could help others too. The 5-year-old boy said that adults get stuck on the wrong question. Everyone always wonders, does the soul suffer during cremation? And he would answer with a tranquility that surprised everyone. The soul is no longer there. For him, it was as clear as breathing. He said that the body was just clothing worn for a time, and that the soul detaches itself before any flame exists. He recounted that the moment life ends, the soul begins to move away with the same naturalness that a child lets go of its mother's hand when it feels safe enough to take its first steps. His revelation began there. Cremation does not touch the soul. He described it as if he were watching a scene unfold before his eyes, spiritual consciousness already above, observing everything from afar, calmly, lucidly, with a clarity that no adult seemed to possess. And he explained that this happens because fire belongs to the material world, while the soul belongs to the plane that exists before and after matter. They are different dimensions that do not intersect. The soul cannot be burned because it is not made of anything that fire can reach. It's like trying to set the wind on fire. It only moves. It is never destroyed. The solution he offered for the adult's fear came from childhood perception itself, which still carries a fresh, uninterrupted spiritual memory. He said that when the body is taken for cremation, the soul is already in another state, higher, lighter, more silent. It may even approach to observe, but not as one who suffers or fears. It is as one who contemplates a stage that has already passed. The soul does not feel the heat of the flames, does not hear the noise, does not perceive the physical details. For it, this moment is merely symbolic. It represents the end of one form and the beginning of another, which does not depend on matter. The boy explained that the only thing that could interfere with the fluidity of the passage was not the fire, but that forgotten vibratory core that accompanies the soul when it carries old emotions. But even so, he said that cremation never worsens this state. On the contrary, the energy of the fire on a symbolic level helps to dissolve the attachment to the physical environment. He commented that for many souls, it is like observing the closing of a cycle, like when a child puts away an old drawing to start another. There is no suffering, there is understanding. He said that the soul, upon seeing the body being cremated, understands once and for all that it no longer belongs to earth. And this understanding generates lightness. For some souls, it is the moment they realize they can move on. For others, it is a silent confirmation that the journey continues, but in another direction. Be that as it may, the fire does not interrupt anything. It only concludes what has already ended. The soul rises, floats, reorganizes itself, gains brilliance, finds those who await it, or continues guided by energies that cannot be explained with human words. The real solution, what adults need to understand, is that cremation never affects the integrity of the soul. It doesn't cause pain, it doesn't imprison, it doesn't interfere with ascension. The soul remains intact, conscious, in a state of heightened perception. Cremation only dissolves the bond with the physical body, allowing the soul to detach itself from everything that could confuse it. The 5-year-old boy said that this process is as natural as sleep. Just as the body sleeps and the spirit moves freely, in death the body is left behind and the soul remains awake, light, clear. He recounted that many souls observe this moment with serenity, almost with gratitude, because they understand that physical existence has fulfilled its purpose. It's like closing a door, knowing that another is opening just ahead. The spiritual passage happens before the fire, during the emotional transition, when the soul realizes it is returning to its original state. The boy said that this recognition is gentle, like the touch of a breeze passing through a curtain. It is light, not heat. It is consciousness, not matter. From a spiritual perspective, cremation is merely a human ritual. The soul no longer identifies with what is burned. It now sees itself as something greater, broader, more subtle, expansive. That's why the boy said that fire doesn't touch the soul, because it's no longer there to be touched. The only thing that matters at that moment is inner lightness, understanding of emotions, detachment from old memories. And this process doesn't depend on the fire. It depends on the soul itself. What truly happens to the soul after cremation is simple, yet profound. It continues its journey. It detaches from the body, energetically reorganizes itself, recognizes who it always was, recovers some of its spiritual lucidity, and moves on to the plane that corresponds to its vibratory state. The body turns to ash, the soul becomes light, the body ends, the soul continues. There is no interruption, there is no pain, there is no risk. Cremation simply closes the physical part of the story. The spiritual part is already underway before the fire even starts. When the 5-year-old boy said that, he wasn't speaking like someone theorizing. He was speaking like someone seeing, like someone feeling, like someone who had already been close to this process in other lives. His purity allowed him to see what adults refused to believe, and his answer, though so simple, was capable of freeing the weight in the heart of anyone who was afraid of the unknown. If this content is truly helping you, please leave a like so that more people can also benefit from this information. This helps spread light, awareness, and spiritual evolution. When we return to the question that opened the entire journey, that silent unease that so many people carry without admitting it, it becomes possible to perceive that the fear was never of cremation itself, but of the possibility of losing one's soul in some unknown process. The initial pain arises from this void of answers, from this fear of not understanding what happens the moment the body ceases to exist. But now, after going through everything that has been said, perception transforms, because spiritual understanding does not arise from theories or dogmas, but from the sensitivity to recognize that life does not end in matter. It is at this point that reflection takes shape. The body may stop, it may be buried or cremated, it may return to the earth or to ashes, but the soul continues, moves, expands, reunites with itself. And this realization brings a kind of peace that no human ritual is capable of erasing. The image of the 5-year-old boy reappears as a reminder of that simple yet profound truth that adults have learned to ignore throughout their lives. He represents that gaze that sees what lies behind the silence, that perception that needs no explanation to understand what is invisible but intensely real. He appears in this closing as a kind of inner clarity, showing that intuition should never have been stifled, that fear should never have been greater than awareness, and that the unknown does not need to be seen as a threat. When one listens to what he said, one realizes that the soul does not fear fire, does not suffer from cremation, is not affected by heat, because it is already far away, because it is already light, because it is already following the path that belongs to it. This certainty should always have accompanied each person since childhood, but it has been erased by the demands of the world, until only the shadow of doubt remains. The reflection that arises here is not only spiritual, but also emotional and profoundly human, for it reveals that much of the suffering of the living stems from what they believe they are losing. People despair not because the soul suffers, but because they fear that the bond will be broken forever. However, when one looks with the sensitivity that this boy possesses, when one understands that consciousness does not depend on the body to exist, everything changes. Life continues in ways that the eyes cannot reach. And when the body is returned to the elements, the soul has already found new paths of light. Cremation ceases to be seen as a moment of destruction and begins to be understood as the closing of a chapter that had already concluded long before. And from this, each person who accompanies this process can breathe more calmly, because they finally understand that nothing essential disappears. It is at this point that the inner transformation becomes clear. By accepting that the soul remains intact after cremation, people begin to deal differently with grief, with absence, with memories, and even with the fear of death itself. Life takes on a different texture when one knows that consciousness persists, that there is no interruption, that the essence continues its journey towards dimensions where time does not weigh, and where existence unfolds in ways impossible to describe. This understanding offers serenity to move forward, because it brings the perception that it is not the fire that determines anyone's destiny, but rather the inner state that each soul carries with it. And when a person begins to see death in this way, everything around them changes. The heart calms down, the weight of farewell softens, and present life gains more depth, because it is understood that everything is part of a continuous movement. The viewer who has come this far can imagine how their own life transforms when they stop fearing this process, when they accept the continuity of the soul, when they realize that nothing they love is lost on invisible paths. They can continue walking more lightly, knowing that the souls of their loved ones are at peace, that fire cannot touch what is eternal, and that on some level the connection continues to breathe, not in the body, but in the subtle field where energy never goes out. And in imagining this transformed life, they can also recognize in themselves the child they once were, the one who felt more than understood, who perceived more than explained, who carried with them a natural lucidity about what it means to exist beyond matter. This inner child is the very 5-year-old boy who appeared throughout the narrative, reminding us that everything that was said was always available to be perceived, but was silenced along the way. At the end of this journey, a feeling of reunion remains, as if each word had served only to lead to a place within one's own consciousness, where the oldest truths still vibrate. Death ceases to be a threat. Fire ceases to be a source of fear. Cremation comes to be understood as part of a natural cycle, and the soul appears as the protagonist of a story that is never interrupted. The 5-year-old boy, now more symbolic than ever, remains there as a reminder that intuition does not lie, that sensitivity is a guide, and that the spiritual world has always been closer than imagined. He becomes the living memory that even in adulthood, it is still possible to listen to what the heart knows, even when the mind tries to deny it. And so, with this renewed clarity, life goes on with a new perspective, more open, deeper, more peaceful. The soul continues on as well, regardless of the form the body may have received in the end, and the cycle is completed in peace with the certainty that nothing essential is lost, and that those who have gone continue their journey, illuminated by their own eternal existence. If you've made it this far, it's because this touched something deep inside you. So subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the next videos will continue this journey with you. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.